It's Fill Your Plate Now, where every bite brings you closer to the farm gate and further from what's unhealthy. Now here's your hosts, Julie and Tammy, helping you live well by filling your plate well.
Welcome to Fill Your Plate Now. I'm Tammy Baker here with my co-host Julie Murphy, and we're going to be doing a little something different today. Instead of having a guest on, Julie is going to be my guest, and we're going to be interviewing her about farming and more specifically about wine farming or wine
the wine
growing
industry.
or the wine
Yeah.
industry
Yeah.
in Arizona.
Yeah.
But first, I just wanted to say that Julie's background is not only in farming with her parents, but as in communication, and she is currently the Director of Strategic Communication for the Arizona Farm Bureau. And you farmed with your parents through 2004?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you call me the nutrition ninja. I'll call you the farming darling. How's that?
That works.
And it'll be fun because I've learned so much about farming from you.
Well-
and that background, because I had no background in that area.
Yeah, and my background's not nutrition, so that's why I think you and I are a perfect fit for Fill Your Plate Now and the farm gate to plate scenario. There's nothing that I think through this podcast that we'll be leaving out from the farm to the table. And the focus will be fresh, local, healthy food, and then that nutritional insights. So Tammy, I think we are the combo.
We've got it covered.
Yeah, we
and
do.
the thing that fascinates me about farming is all of the modern technology, all the changes in farming over the years, how precise it is, and really wine growing in Arizona. I mean, I always thought of Arizona as such an arid desert that there would be no way that you could grow wine here. But you're going to tell us a little bit about wine growing today in terms of the farming aspect of it, and also economic impact. Has the wine industry grown to make a substantial economic impact?
It has, and there's a few things, not everything, but there's a few things here that I'm going to read word for word because I think it's so fascinating and I don't want to mess it up, because I know my wine buddies are going to be watching this and they're going to be saying, Julie, do you get it right? So
You didn't have wine before you came into
yeah,
it,
I did
you?
not have
okay,
any wine
Okay, just
before,
checking.
But I may later. I may afterwards. So after I have my glass of milk.
There you go. Okay. You're good then.
Yeah,
Or we'll
or-
put cheese with the wine.
The cheese.
you
Let's
go.
do the cheese with the
Okay,
wine.
we're good.
But so some of this I do want to read, especially the economic impact and its significance here in Arizona, because there was a study that wasn't done too long ago. But the Arizona wine industry, I'm going to call it a powerhouse because it's generated over $4.24 billion in total economic activity, according to the 2022 Wine America National Economic Impact Study. So it directly employs around 18,045 people and supports an additional, nearly 6,000 jobs in related industries like the farming, growing the wine grapes, the transportation issues, marketing, and so much more. Beyond direct sales, which hit $133 million in 2019, that's why I wanted to make sure I read this, the industry boosts local economies through tourism, with wine-related visitor spending surging 677%. I mean, that's kind of fun to say.
Amazing.
677% since 2011. This ripple effect supports businesses from packaging to hospitality, making wine a key driver of Arizona's economic growth, and certainly in the tourism realm. So that's why I like to talk about wine,
Well, and we all know the tourism has just grown by leaps and bounds. So hopefully they're helping to contribute to
Yeah.
that wine consumption.
Yep, absolutely. And I know I'm contributing to it too.
As you should be. As you should be. Helping our Arizona wine growers.
Yes.
And it seems unique to me
Yeah.
that there are grapes that are to become wine in Arizona. What do you find the unique characteristics of Arizona wine growing?
So what's so fun is, and I'm sure other regions, I'm told that nearly every state in the union is growing some kind of wine grapes and making wine. But I'm still going to say our terroir, our climate especially, makes it unique. And that's what a lot of our winemakers will tell you. So, and I'm sure the winemakers in Oregon will land on that same comment, but we truly do have an amazing climate that allows them to do a lot of things. There's the state's 3 main American viticultural areas are Verde Valley, Sonoyta, and Wilcox, and they offer high-altitude vineyards with warm days and cool nights, which grapes love, wine grapes especially. And it's obviously ideal for growing those bold flavors, your Syrah, your Tempranillo, some of the other wine grapes. And then the monsoon season, even though there can be a degree of risk to that, and this is the farm babe or whatever. No, not the farm babe. Somebody already has that moniker, but me, the farm girl. In fact,
Farm and Darling.
yeah, right. In fact, we're bringing the farm babe on to
We
one of
are
our
in a few weeks.
episodes later. But the monsoon season has a degree of risk if we have a hailstorm. But the monsoon season is also good. So it's one of those times, you're getting the rain. Now, obviously, our wine grapes, they make application with the sprinkler systems and the drip systems. And wine grapes only use 1 acre to 1.25 acre foot per acre. Those are farm terms for the amount of water that we use. So it's a low water use crop. But some of those summer rains, some people like to call them monsoons. My dad, retired farmer, will call them summer rains, can be good for the grapes. And so all of that climatic shifts and differences and what occurs here in Arizona versus other states, we all have our uniqueness, and that's definitely one of them. Another thing that makes our industry unique is Arizona is still considered young, at least this latest phase of it. There's quite a bit of history to Arizona wine, and I'll get into that. But this latest group of some of our amazing wine growers, they get to experiment a little bit more freely because it's kind of new, and they're able to drive some of these grape varieties and blends and stuff like that. And plus, our state is identified as a Mediterranean-like climate, so it mirrors regions in Spain and stuff like that. So that's a lot of times why they're introducing and have introduced some of those grapes from Spain and Italy. And it's producing these distinct wines that you and I can now enjoy and have been able to enjoy for quite some time here in Arizona.
That is interesting. And my first picture in my mind is like a saguaro cactus and grapevines.
Yeah.
But the areas you mentioned are a higher altitude, so it
Yes.
isn't that, desert saguaro cactus area.
No, but interestingly, Greg Gonnerman, one of my wine growers, he was growing some vines in his backyard in Mesa.
Really?
Yeah. Now, he did end up getting his vineyard down in the Wilcox area, which is really where most of the grapes are growing, about 80% of them. So that's where he's growing them now. But it's amazing what you can do with wine grapes if you dedicate your heart, mind, and soul to it. A little bit of sweat and blood, too, I'm sure. But
And I didn't realize they were a low water.
yeah, they're a low water use crop, and we like to talk about that a lot here in Arizona because, ag, we use a lot of water, but you and I need a lot of food, so we have to have that water, and wine grapes are one of those low water use crops.
Wow. And
Yeah.
you mentioned something about there is a history then behind growing wine, because I think maybe it's just been the last decade I remember really hearing
Yep.
much about Arizona wines. But how did it start here
Yeah,
in Arizona?
and it's fascinating to me. So this one I'm going to read to you too because I want to make sure I get it straight. Winemaking in Arizona, drum roll please, dates back to the mid-16th century when Spanish explorers, recognizing similarities in their native soils, planted again, keep in mind Spain, that Mediterranean kind of, planted vineyards and missions in what is now known as Santa Cruz County. By the 18th century, Arizona's wine production, and this is the thing that fascinated me about some of the research I did for this podcast, Arizona wine's production outpaced California's.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, so that would have been 18th century, that would have been the 1700s,
And
right?
you think of California as
I
having
know. I know.
Lots of vineyards, yeah.
Yeah, we were outpacing California in that period of time, and it was driven by European settlers and miners here to our state, or at least this region, this area. However, prohibition, but not so much. There apparently was state level prohibition, and then on the national level. So prohibition in 1914, 5 years before the federal ban, halted the industry. So, and that was here in Arizona, according to the history buffs, where I gathered this from. But so there that, and I'm sure a lot of states could identify with that, because especially when the national prohibition hit across the United States, it probably had an impact on a lot of the different states' wine industries. But it wasn't until the 1970s when a Dr. Gordon Dutt, D-U-T-T, researcher at the University of Arizona, proved the state's potential for quality grapes, and specifically wine grapes. We have grown in the state table grapes as well, but other states outpaced it and kind of decimated our industry in the table grape area, but not in the wine grapes. And that modern winemaking, it basically revived thanks to him. So and I get all excited when I talk about this stuff, because that's where that relationship between the land-grant university, like the University of Arizona, and the fact that they have cooperative extension, which here's the research, here's the teaching, and that cooperative extension also doing the research, but they also work with the farmers to make practical application. So if it hadn't have been Mr. Dutt or Professor Dutt from the University of Arizona in the 1970s, we may not have had this revival. So it's almost like there's been two periods of Arizona's wine grape growing, all the way back to Father Kino planting a few vines. So he had wine when he served communion. I'm not sure. Somebody will call us after this. After this episode, and tell us. Yeah. But I just, it's very exciting. And then apparently an Arizona Farm Winery Act of 1982 legalized production again. And it sparked the growth of over 120 wineries that we now have in the state today.
There are 120 wineries?
Yeah, as the latest number that I got. So it just is proof of the pudding that this state is ideal for us to have an opportunity with wine growing, winemaking, and all the amazing families that I've met that are invested time and sweat and heart into this.
Wow.
Yep.
The growth is amazing.
Yep.
That is really something. And, speaking of growth, I mean, we know Arizona has grown tremendously. And I could tell this last season, the tourism has really skyrocketed because we've had a lot of not just tourists for a week or two, but winter visitors that are here for 3, 4, 5 or more months, it seems like sometimes. And has that helped the wine business at all?
It's been a game changer. And then Arizona's Department of Tourism, I believe, they've been tracking this too. So there's been a 500% increase in wine-related employment. I mentioned that 677% jump since 2011. But the Arizona Office of Tourism is completely bullish on this because they know that that's the draw, whether it's in-state tourists like me, Julie Murphy, living in Gilbert, and I go down to Sonoyta because I want to try some of their wine. But it's even drawing a lot of people from out of state. So the 120 wine producers, that's up 200% since 2011. And what they've done to really help the tourism, which I find fascinating, is they've leaned into tasting rooms, festivals, and what they call visit-ready vineyards. In other words, I can go visit you and look at your vineyard, especially if I'm a member of their wine club, because a lot of times, and this isn't just, it's not unique to Arizona, it's any wine region, but if I join a wine club, typically that vineyard or the owner of that vineyard is going to invite me out to his vineyard for a big meal, for an outstanding in the field kind of meal. And so that's a way for me to actually go to where they make the wine that I've fallen in love with. It's so fun, and I just love that kind of stuff. In fact, one of my winemaker colleague or friends that I've gotten to know over the years, I said, okay, because I'm not a member of a wine club. I said, I think I need to join your wine club. He says, Julie, don't worry about that. He said, I love that you want to, and so you can. I'm not discouraging you from that, but I promise you I'll invite you to one of the dinners.
Oh, nice.
And that might influence me to join his wine club. About 40% of wine tourists take day trips, with 30% staying for multiple nights. So they make it a whole weekend. I did that with my friends about 2 years ago. I decided I wanted them to discover some of the things that I had learned hanging out with some of the winemakers here in Arizona. And we had a ball. I mean,
nice.
4 BFFs in one car, just having a good old time. So 30% stay for multiple nights. And so that's obviously going to boost the local economies. And the marketing efforts, the federal AVA designations I told you about earlier, the Verde Valley, Sonoyta, Wilcox, and highway signs for wine regions are more of a draw. So if you drive around, have you been down to Wilcox for some time? Or
I haven't been there recently.
So if you drive around Wilcox, you'll see signs, and some of them say wine tour trail or something like that. So literally where you're driving, you're probably going to run into one of the family vineyards there. So it's making Arizona, for lack of a better term, a rising star in this tourism arena.
Are these wineries open weekdays or all year round? Or
some of them are open all year round. They usually do have, like they may open on a Thursday and they close Sunday at 5 or 6, Weekends are always really important for anyone that has a wine taste. And not all of the vineyards have a wine tasting location on their vineyards. Some do. If they don't have it on their the vineyard, they have it in downtown Wilcox, for example. They have a tasting room. And, I was down there about 3 weeks ago to interview Jim and Ruth Graham of Golden Rule. And they used to have a tasting room experience on their farm, but they just got so busy because he also raises pistachio trees. They got so busy with other things. And I think they're getting to that place where they're kind of ready to retire as well. So they bought a tasting room right in downtown Wilcox, and it's an old Chevrolet dealership. And the way they fixed it up, it's delightful. So their tasting room may be off of the vineyard grounds, but sometimes they're very nearby. And, this studio is in Scottsdale. There's a lot of tasting rooms here in Scottsdale, right in Old Town Scottsdale. So,
I didn't realize that.
There's all sorts of fun stuff when it comes to that. But they've really done it wise by trying to have the customer connect to them, the winemaker, the wine grower. It's just really neat.
Oh, that's amazing. That's fun. And, I know one of our past guests had mentioned something about educational facilities that provide training or courses or programs specific for winemaking. Has that helped with the increase?
It's been huge because it's the Southwest Wine Center at Yavapai College. And they are, I think it's annually or per class. Let's see, they train about, here it is. They train about 100 students annually in winemaking and vineyard management. So then what it's helping with, let's say, like a Jim Graham, he is more the farmer, so he's going to raise the vines, and he's got a variety of wine grapes, Syrah, Petite Syrah, Zinfandel. He's got way more than that, but those are the ones that come to mind. So he's a farmer first. He's a really good wine grape grower, but he's hired a winemaker to help him with the wines that he then bottles. So, and that's not unusual. That's real typical. Well, now because of the Southwest Wine Center, and they've been around since 2010, these wine growers have more access to some of these people that they can hire somebody that would manage the tasting room, or they can hire somebody that will help them with the winemaking. And maybe they do want to get into the winemaking, but they don't want to do it alone. And so this has been a huge boon for Arizona to have the Southwest Wine Center plotted and planted right here in Arizona.
Oh, I can imagine. Well, you said 100 students a year?
Yeah.
That's turning out a lot of winemakers,
Yeah.
or potential winemakers. That's great.
And the other thing that happened with them is they started with just 1 acre of wine grapes. Well, now they have 15 acres of wine grapes. And I do want to give the Southwest Wine Center a few more props. Now it's been, I think, 5 years ago, we approached them in 2018, 2019, and asked them if the students would create for us a centennial wine for Arizona Farm Bureau, because our centennial was 2021, and they did, and it was delightful.
Oh, that's great.
And the sad thing, I mean, maybe I need to approach them again and say, hey, do you have the recipe for that centennial wine? Because I don't think we have any bottles left. They were that good, and we either gave them away as speaker gifts, and we also served at an event that we host. It's a fundraising event for our 501c3, which is our educational farming company with the Arizona Farm Bureau. Mm-hmm. And Katie Akins, our director of ag education, puts this on, but it's our Racing for the Bacon. It's one of our ways to raise money. Makes sense. Uh-huh. And we had served our centennial wine during that event as well. So,
nice.
And I absconded. I did purchase them actually, but I absconded with about 3 bottles, and I tried to stretch it out for a while, but it was really tasty. And it was the Southwest Wine Center that did that for us.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, isn't that awesome? So I don't know. There's just so many stories that I could tell you about the wine industry and having met some of the people. And we've been doing, you and I are doing this podcast, Fill Your Plate Now, but for Arizona Farm Bureau on Fridays, I typically do a talk to a farmer, talk to a rancher, talk to a winemaker Friday. And right now I'm actually still in the thick of the series interviewing these winemakers. I've interviewed Eric Glomsky with Page Spring Cellars. I told you about Jim and Ruth Graham with Golden Rule. I just finished interviewing Rod Keeling of Keeling and Schaefer. Just absolutely the most precious people. These are family owned and operated and run estate wine environments, because they raise their own grapes and they use them. And a lot of our wine grape growers also grow enough to use for their estate wines for each year, and then also sell the extra grapes that they grow to other makers. So,
well, I didn't get to try the Centennial wine, but do you think they'd do a Fill Your Plate Now wine for us?
You know what? We need to ask them. Yeah.
We'll have them on.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's funny because I hadn't even thought of that until I was just talking to you about it, because the Southwest Wine Center, and it's a lovely place, and they have a tasting room, and here these students are going through, and they're all ages. Maybe they have to be 21 plus because they're making.
That's probably part of it, yes.
But one of their graduates, and I think he only graduated in 2018, 2019. He's a retired attorney, Emil Mullen with Cove Mesa. And he graduated, and he's sitting around sipping wine with his wife, who's a retired engineer. So realize they got into the wine business as they were retiring from their professions. Well, now they have Cove Mesa in the Cottonwood area, I think it is, and fantastic wine. Well, he's a student from the Southwest Wine Center.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Wow, it's amazing how it's grown, but I'm sure they've had some challenges along the way too. What
they
kind
have.
Of challenges have they had to overcome, and how?
Yeah, it's been a variety of things. I mentioned Prohibition in 1914, so it kind of stopped it, and then it had to have this resurgence thanks to Gordon Dutt with the University of Arizona in the 1970s. So that was kind of the challenge. Because of this revival in the 1970s and just going forward, there's all sorts of things that they've had to deal with, and some of them have been on the policy side of things or the legal side of things. There was restrictive sales and distribution laws post this 1982 law, so that had limited growth. Just recently, they had some other legislative things that they had to really work through to help protect the wine industry. And then we've always got weather because, again, this is an agriculture crop, and we've also got pest issues. I remember one of the recent interviews of one of our winemakers. All of a sudden, his precious new vines that he'd planted, he went out to the field, and it seems like the leaves were literally just disintegrating before him. Well, he discovered it was a leaf cutter bug.
Oh.
And so he connected with the University of Arizona's Extension Service, and they tried to examine it. They finally figured it out with this leaf cutter bug. And, you know, down the road, apparently that winemaker wasn't necessarily having that problem, or who knows. But it took him a while to figure out what he could do so that he could control that pest that was destroying his vines and yet not hurt the beneficials like ladybugs and some of the other bugs that you want still in your
It's
field.
tricky.
And he came up, don't ask me what it was, but he came up, he got it figured out, and he saved his vines. But those are some of the challenges that are very typical to, you know, my family, cotton, wheat, and alfalfa. We had our pest issues. We've had our weather issues. I remember one year, you know, we talked about the summer rains and or monsoons. Dad had it was a very dramatic hailstorm, and he had to take pictures for the crop insurance and all that stuff, but it annihilated his field of cotton. So some of the issues, whether you're a cotton farmer or a wine grape grower, are going to be the same: weather, pests, those kind of things. But they're in it for the long haul. These individuals that I talk to are very passionate about it. So a challenge to them is the challenge. They want to take on the challenge and figure it out and make it work. You know,
It seems like it's a very delicate balance.
Yeah.
As is a lot of agriculture.
Right.
Because something like
Yeah.
a pest you don't anticipate, finding something to alleviate it, but
Yeah.
not hurt any of the other
right?
wildlife or anything else. It's a constant battle.
It's a constant battle, and in fact, some of the individuals I've interviewed, I remember when I went out to Eric Glomsky's Page Springs cellars, and when I got there, and we got there a little bit early, we were about 20 minutes early, and I was checking in with his team, and they said, oh, right now he's on a forklift, he's fixing or changing something, so they're constantly in the thick of it.
Wow.
It's not always just the tasting wine and, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And in spite of that, they've grown tremendously.
Yes, they have.
That's
They have.
crazy. Do you see this to be kind of the end of the growth, or do you think there's still a lot of room for
Actually,
more
I think,
growth?
and I'm taking this from the experts, I think there's a lot of potential for growth. They're predicting a doubling of wineries to over 200 and a significant increase in vineyard acreage in the next decade. Depends on who you talk to, give or take a few. And the acreage since, I think, 2011 has already doubled to 1,500 acres, which to me, like, when I think of just wine grapes and all of the acres that my dad used to manage, not only his own farm, but also he was the farm manager for the University of Arizona's Maricopa Agricultural Center in Maricopa. So there was a time when he was managing just himself about 5,000 acres. And so then I hear, 1,500 acres in wine grapes, which doesn't sound like a lot for a kid the way I was raised. And yet it is. If you go out there and you see them during harvest, and I believe, and this is where my winemakers might have to correct me, but I believe I've heard anywhere where 2.5 tons per acre all the way up to 3.5 tons per acre of wines grapes that they can harvest. So you multiply that by that 1,500 acres, and you're talking for an industry that kind of had a struggle getting a foothold. and it was finally starting to go somewhere in the 80s, 90s, and certainly in this century. For us to be able to say that we have 1,500 acres of wine grapes, that's amazing. And because it's a low water use crop, and because most adults, we like our wine, we're going to celebrate that. So a lot of people feel like we have a lot of potential. We also have a lot of, getting back to some of the challenges, because of our state's water issues and certain areas, we're always nervous about the availability of water. So, that could be a whole other issue, but we need to bring on the water experts to interview on that. So that 1,500 acres approximately of wine grapes that we have in the state of Arizona is very important to the wine industry, and we really have to protect it. And then, of course, we've got that 120 plus winemakers in the state. And these are challenges too, but I do think that we have opportunities with our labor, with just our boutique and our creativity that we find in the Arizona wine industry that are really going to give us a lot of potential. And there's still those challenges, though, of that production cap in another area as it relates to how much wine a vineyard can produce per year. And I haven't even gotten into that because it's a little bit over my head and I don't know all the details. But there is potential for a lot of growth, and some people are making some estimates that I've talked to that they feel that we probably will end up with more winemakers.
Does any of the wine go out of state now?
That's a good question, and I'm not. Yes, because on the wine clubs, they do have customers from out of state, so it's shipped out of state, yes.
Okay. I wasn't sure if they had enough of a quantity that it could go out of state yet. But
I do think that for those that have the clubs, they probably make a priority of making sure they ship them, especially their new varieties and or that year's bottle making year. So, and a lot of them are out of state. So, yes, they ship it out of state.
so
But
for those of
we're
us,
not like California. We are a drop in the bucket compared to California. So that's one of the reasons why I really encourage Arizona families, for those that appreciate a quality wine, to discover Arizona wine, because it's unique. Most of the time it's going to be rare, and we love rare. We love that. It creates value. And I can promise you, because I've taste sampled a lot of this wine, Arizona wine is good wine.
that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Why should Arizonans try it? And
Yeah.
you've given us the answer.
Right. It's because it's a quality wine. It's award-winning wines, and it's just fun. Even if so I told you my BFF, so we went one weekend to Sonoita, and we stayed a couple days. So of the four of us, one of us, she does not imbibe in any type of alcohol. So she's always the designated driver if we do something like this. But she will tell you how delightful the weekend trip was, just meeting people, visiting with the winemakers themselves or the owner of the vineyard, and then learning what it takes to do what they do. She was as fascinated as I was, and she took a few little sips here and there just to kind of taste it, but she validated the point that just the whole experience it's on another level. It's truly something fun to do.
I think anytime you can see behind the scenes and see the food on the farm being made into the food as you go, it just gives you a whole new appreciation, and it just really enhances the experience.
You and your husband should do a weekend either down south or up north. Anywhere you go, you're going to love it. And there's some quality wines, again, award-winning wines. People are surprised about it because it's kind of been under the radar for a while, but I do think that's changing.
Yeah,
I
we're
really
gonna
think
have to do that. We get up to Flagstaff quite a bit, so
Yeah.
we may go up that direction. And
Yeah.
you said Cottonwood had
Yes.
Yeah.
Cottonwood is great.
and try that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And any questions you have, I actually encourage people to go to the Arizona Wine Growers website and just Google Arizona Wine Growers, because then the website will come up, and they will have they have a pretty comprehensive and up-to-date list. Now, on fillyourplate.org, if you plug in farms to visit, a lot of the farms that you can visit are vineyards.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
in fact, if you balance all that out, it's a little heavier on the wine vineyard side of it because there's a lot that you can go visit. So that's what makes it really valuable, and just the collegial experience, doing it with friends, doing it with family, that makes it so special. And when you think of wine has cachet, you think of the old world, and you think of Italy and Spain and France and the wines, and here we are, we're replicating some of that, and in fact, some of our wine grapes are just really fantastic to try. So
Well,
it's
you've talked
fascinating.
me into it. I'm
Yeah.
going to have to make my way up to one of those vineyards
Yeah.
and go through a little tour. But for our listeners, if you had 3 takeaways from this, what
Yes.
would you want them to remember?
So I wrote these down. I didn't want to forget. Try Arizona wines. Hunt for the ones that are a favorite. If you like sweet wines, they're making sweet wines. If you like a drier wine, if it relates to a particular grape, and I cannot tell you how many grape varieties. A couple of the winemakers or vineyard owners that I've talked to, 2 of them had 18 different varieties that they're growing.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, that's what I said. So there's a lot of variety, a lot of experiences, and, it's worth a try. So hunt for your favorite. Visit a winery. We talked about that again, fillyourplate.org. You can go to the searchable database section and farms to visit, a lot of them that pop up. Let's say you're going down to Wilcox. A lot of the farms that pop up are actually vineyards. And then go to a tasting room. So you don't have to go far out. Go to Old Town Scottsdale and just walk around and discover some of the tasting rooms there. Again, if you go to either fillyourplate.org or the Arizona Wine Growers, it's probably arizonawinegrowers.com or arizonawinegrowers.org, but just Google it and it'll get you there. And you can kind of assess where you might want to go or what wines you want to try.
Okay.
And then, make it fun. And like my friend, you don't even have to be a wine drinker to enjoy the ambiance, the experience, the cachet that really comes with the old world meets new world, and here we are doing our own thing in our unique way here in the state of Arizona. It's just special, just
That's
special.
amazing. You always amaze me. You always have such great information on agriculture in Arizona. I learn something every time. Thanks
Well, thank
for
you.
doing this today.
Absolutely, I
This
had
has
a
been
ball.
great.
Thank you.
Okay, and we will see everyone
Yeah.
next week then
Yeah.
on Fill Your Plate Now.